Good evening. Welcome to our Municipal Council agenda for Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. We are going to call this meeting to order at this time and ask if there's any declarations of interest. Not seeing any, I will move down the agenda with our land acknowledgement statement. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaties First Nation and other Indigenous peoples, and on behalf of Council, I thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as East Gwillimbury's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of these territories. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. I'd like to welcome all of you here tonight. We're going to go through an agenda that we would normally do in the evenings as well. We're pleased to have as many people here tonight for a very important issue, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes as we go through some of our formalities. At this time, we have no deputations. The next is presentations, and there are none there at this point. We have committee recommendations to adopt the Committee of the Whole recommendations from the meeting held on March 7th, 2023. Be it resolved that Council adopt the Committee of the Whole Council recommendations from the meeting held on March 7th, 2023. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor LaHaye, Councillor Crone, all those in favor? And that's carried.
Through you, Madam Mayor, following this afternoon's Committee of the Whole meeting, there were two recommendations that the committee wanted to adopt tonight. I'm going to bring those up in front of the screen before Council for their consideration. So through you, Madam Mayor, the first recommendation was in relation to the extension of the lease at the annex. And the second recommendation is in relation to the advisory committee status update and the next steps that Council wanted to proceed with for recruitment. Council does have an opportunity to pass this motion in one.
Is that the pleasure of Council?
Sure.
Thank you. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster, Councillor Crothers, all those in favor? And that's carried. We have an adoption of some minutes that we need passed tonight. To adopt the Committee of the Whole Council minutes for the meeting held on March the 7th, be it resolved that Council adopt the Committee of the Whole Council minutes for the meeting held on March 7th, 2023. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Crone, Councillor Crothers, all those in favor? And that's carried. The next item that I have is to adopt the minutes from regular meeting on March the 7th, 2023, and the special meetings held on March the 9th and March the 13th. Be it resolved that Council adopt the following minutes. Council minutes from the regular meeting on March 7th, 2023. Council minutes from the special meeting held on March 9th, 2023. And Council minutes from the special meeting held on March the 13th, 2023. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Foster, Councillor LaHaye, all those in favor? And that's carried. Well, now I'll get to the task at hand here with our statutory public meeting. Why, I'm sure most of you are here tonight. We have a statutory public meeting, and I'd like to start off with a bit of a statement, so there'll be an understanding of how the evening will flow. Members of the public, this portion of the council meeting is a statutory public meeting under the Planning Act. The purpose of this public meeting is to inform the public and obtain public input on 2 planning applications received by the town prior to a full technical analysis being conducted by our staff. No decision to approve or refuse the applications will be made here tonight. There are 2 development applications for the public meeting. There will be presentations from both town planning staff and the applicants on this development application. Following these presentations, members of the public will be invited to offer their comments or concerns respecting the proposals. Submissions can also be made in writing. It's very important that the town receive the names and addresses of individuals having an interest in these planning applications. If you plan to speak to council tonight at this meeting, or if you wish to be notified of any future council meetings concerning the application being considered, you must provide your contact information to the clerk. Under the Planning Act, the application or residents have a right to appeal any decision of council on a planning application to the Ontario Land Tribunal. But you must verbally express any comments or concerns here tonight, or submit any comments or concerns in writing to the town before the bylaw is passed. The tribunal may dismiss all or part of an appeal made in respect to an application. This public meeting is being audio and video recorded for storing and broadcasting on the internet. Your name, address, comments, and any other personal information is being collected and maintained for the purpose of sending correspondence relating to the matters before council and creating a record that is available to the public in hard copy format and on the internet in an electronic format pursuant to Section 27 of the Municipal Freedoms of Information and Privacy Act. Questions about collection of personal information should be directed to the town clerk. And we have the first meeting here. Public meeting, item 1, zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision application, Queensville Properties Development Corporation, 1002 Doan Road, Queensville, Phase 8, ZBA 2301 and 19T23001. An application overview and general manager, an introduction, General Manager Bégin.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to call on our Manager of Planning, Victoria Moore, to provide the planning context for this application. And she will, again, reiterate it, that this is for information and comment, and no planning decisions have been made at this point.
Good evening. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, staff, and all the members of the public we have with us tonight. I'm Victoria Moore, the Manager of Planning at the town, and I'm here to provide a brief presentation on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision application for 1002 Doan Road, also known as Queensville Phase 8. As Madam Mayor outlined earlier, the purpose of tonight's public meeting is to fulfill the requirements of Section 3412 of the Planning Act, to hold at least one public meeting to provide the public an opportunity to make representations in respect of the proposed applications. Every person who attends tonight's public meeting shall be given an opportunity to speak regarding the proposed application, and any member of the public may also make written submissions. Any comments received tonight will be reviewed by staff through an ongoing technical review and addressed by the applicant where necessary. Can I have the next slide, please? So the subject property is located on the northeast corner of 2nd Concession and Doan Road. The property area is approximately 30 hectares or 75 acres. The property is currently used for agricultural purposes, and surrounding land uses are primarily agricultural and low-density residential. The proposed applications would rezone the land to facilitate the development of a residential subdivision including 351 residential units, an internal road network, a park, and environmental blocks. Next slide, please. The subject property is designated low-density residential and environmental protection in the town's current official plan. Lands designated low-density residential are intended to provide ground-oriented housing units. Next slide, please. The property is currently zoned rural, and the rural zone permits a range of agricultural and agricultural-related uses. Next slide, please. The application proposes to rezone the lands to various residential zones to permit single detached and townhouse dwelling units. The application was also recently revised to include zoning provisions to permit a coach house within an attached or detached private garage. The environmental protection area, as identified in the town's official plan, is intended to be zoned environmental protection and remain as undeveloped woodland and valley land blocks within the subdivision area. Next slide, please. The proposed residential development will consist of 351 residential units, including 217 single detached units and 134 townhouse dwellings. The subdivision also proposes a park block, a woodlot, a valley land, and a stormwater management pond, which is existing on the site. Next slide, please. The submitted applications are currently under review by town departments and external agencies. Matters to be evaluated and addressed in a future recommendation report to council include parking and traffic circulation, consistency and conformity with provincial, regional, and local planning policies, the appropriateness and compatibility of the proposed development, including the proposed zoning provisions, the establishment of environmental protection boundaries and buffers, and trail connections to existing communities. Next slide, please. Planning staff have not received any comments from the public at the time of writing this presentation. Next slide. And staff will continue to undertake a technical review on the subject application, including discussions from tonight's public meeting, and a comprehensive report with recommendations on the zoning amendment and draft plan of subdivision applications will be presented to a future council meeting. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the next item pertaining to this application is the presentation from the applicant agent.
Is the applicant agent in the chambers tonight?
Good evening. I'm attending virtually. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you. Can everyone out there hear? We can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Excellent. Okay, good evening, everyone. Mayor, councilors, staff, and members of the public. My name is Lucy Pronk with KLM Planning Partners, and I'm here today on behalf of our client, Queensville Properties Development Corporation. I think we can go to the next slide. So Victoria's done a great job of giving the context for the lands and an introduction of the applications, so I will try not to be too repetitive. As she mentioned, our lands are located north of Doan Road and east of 2nd Concession and are approximately 30.5 hectares with frontage on both of those roads. Next slide, please. So the proposed development is known as Queensville Phase 8, and it is the 8th phase of a number of developments that our client has pursued in Queensville. We're proposing 1 access to 2nd Concession and 2 accesses to Doan Road, which is shown on the plan here. Victoria gave the breakdown of the units that we're proposing. The only thing I'll maybe touch upon is the 2 different types of townhouses that are proposed. So there's 134 townhouses in total, 61 of which are your standard street townhouses, and 73 of which are a rear laneway product type. So with that type of product, you would have a pedestrian access external to those dark brown blocks of units, and vehicle access would be via the laneway, which bisects those blocks, and that would lead to a driveway and a detached garage at the rear of the townhouse blocks. You'll also note that there are 2 stormwater management ponds on this plan. One is within the subject lands and one is outside of them. It's important to note that both are already existing. So both have been constructed at the time of some of the surrounding development, specifically the existing houses south of Doan Road and some of the other phases of our development north of the subject land. So those stormwater management facilities are existing and servicing those surrounding lands. There's also the 7.9 hectare woodlot and the associated 10-meter buffer with that woodlot. Those woodlands are proposed to remain and be conveyed to the municipality. And we're exploring opportunities for some trail networks throughout the buffer lands, which I will speak to a little bit more in a couple of slides. And lastly, you'll note that Block 249 on this plan is a 1.5 acre park, which has been kind of strategically located adjacent to those buffer lands and to the potential trails. Next slide, please. So as Victoria noted, the lands are designated low density residential and environmental protection area by the Queensville Secondary Plan. So we are implementing the Queensville Secondary Plan by introducing single detached and townhouse dwellings, which are both permitted in that designation, at a density of 28 units per net hectare, where a range of 20 to 30 is what's permitted. It may be important to note that we have refined the limits of the environmental protection designation. So specifically on the eastern portion of the lands that, as per the schedule on the screen here, are shown as environmental protection. The limits of development were staked as part of the environmental work that was associated with constructing the stormwater management ponds that are now existing. And that work was done when the lands south of Doan were developed. And the East Gwillimbury official plan does allow for natural heritage evaluations or environmental impact studies that are completed at the time of development to establish a more specific boundary than what's shown on the schedules to the plan, without needing a formal amendment to the plan. Next slide. Thank you. So here we have a community plan that includes the surrounding existing and proposed land uses for some helpful context. Some areas to note, which I've already kind of spoken to, is the land south of Doan, which are residential uses that are largely constructed at this time. The conceptual plan for the lands that are northwest of us, so the lands between our subject lands and second concession. It's probably helpful to note that those lands have recently been purchased by our client. And so now we're able to take kind of a coordinated approach with the development of both parcels and any associated trail that will go from those lands to ours and vice versa. This plan also shows the majority of phases 1 through 6, which are north of Doan Road and west of Leslie Street, each of which has been draft approved and is in various stages of registration and construction. You'll also see the existing estate residential along Algonquin Forest Drive, and the greater woodlot system in Queensville that our woodlot is ultimately contributing to, along with what's shown in the dashed blue line there, a conceptual potential trail network. And so the intention, as I mentioned, with the lands that are northwest of us that our client has recently purchased, there is a trail alignment there through the buffers that ultimately could lead to our proposed park. It could go beyond that to the existing stormwater management pond, and then there's potential for it to connect up to the trails that are associated with phases 1 through 6. So between that and the proposed trail network, which will have sidewalks on at least one side of the street, future residents would have easy access to the surrounding neighborhood parks and elementary schools and existing uses. You'll also note that the street network and the trails are all kind of funneling in the direction of the lands that are designated as Queensville Center. So this layout provides multiple ways of getting to the upcoming recreation center, which I believe broke ground in the fall of 2022. And we'll also have the benefit of leading to any future development that will serve as kind of the central focal point of Queensville. Next slide. So notwithstanding the fact that the proposed development is very supportive of active transportation, we recognize that residents will need parking for both themselves and for visitors to the community. So each unit will offer at least 2 parking spaces, and the plan itself has the potential to accommodate approximately 220 on-street parking spaces, which is shown on the plan here. Next slide. So with our zoning bylaw amendment, we will be utilizing 2 of the existing zone categories that were introduced for some of the earlier phases of Queensville developments that our client has undertaken. So specifically the R23 Exception 50 zone for the single detached dwellings and the R4 Exception 63 for the street townhouse product type. And the intention with that is that we're planning to introduce a very similar built form to what's already been approved in other areas of Queensville. And then, as Victoria noted, we are introducing a new R4 exception, and this is specifically related to the rear lane product type that I was speaking about earlier. And some of those additions that Victoria was speaking about in relation to adding flexibility for a coach house above the detached garages, but also allowing the flexibility for breezeways to make those attached garages. It's important to note that breezeways and coach houses are already permitted in the parent East Gwillimbury bylaw. We just needed to revise the provisions a little bit to ensure that those townhouses, which is a rear lane product type, can utilize breezeways and coach houses as required as they are designed. And lastly, we're introducing the open space and environmental protection zones for the proposed, or for the existing woodlot, the existing stormwater management, and then the proposed park. Next slide, please. So we have conducted a number of supporting studies to accompany these applications, and these have been submitted to the town and are currently under review, as Victoria mentioned. So these studies have both evaluated the suitability of the lands for what we're proposing, but also have informed the version of the proposed development that's before you tonight. Obviously, these studies make up part of the public record and can be made available to any member of the public or council that would like to review them in more detail. Next slide. That concludes my presentation for tonight, and I thank you for your time, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions from members of council? Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I wanted just to confirm something that you said. You said that there was 2 parking spots per unit. Is that in addition to the 220 on-street parking?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Crothers, that's correct. Yeah, so there would be two required spaces per unit, meaning in some instances, one in the driveway, one in the garage, that kind of orientation, in addition to the 220 on-street parking spaces.
Okay, thank you. And secondly, if I may, Madam Mayor, a priority of this council is to have complete walkable communities, and I'm not seeing on there any professional or retail space. I'm wondering if that's part of the plan. We want people to not have to have 2 cars per unit, but to instead to be able to get to shops and services and professional professional retail spaces by being able to walk. And I don't see that in the plan. Is that something that you're contemplating?
Again, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Carruthers, it's not contemplated at this time to have professional or commercial uses in the plan. In accordance with the Queensville Secondary Plan, this area is intended for low-density residential uses, and so that's what we've proposed. The intention would be to make sure that there is ample connectivity to other areas in Queensville that are ultimately intended for commercial uses as per the Secondary Plan.
I just feel like this is on the edge, so that central space is an awfully long ways away. So that's my concern with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Foster, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll take a little further where Councillor Carruthers was going with that. You talked about 73 laneway townhouses, and you talked about those laneways being at the rear. You also mentioned a driveway and a garage. Most of the laneways that I've seen, the garage is right at the end of the property at the lane, at that rear lane. Is that correct in this instance, or is there indeed a driveway plus a garage?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Foster. We are still working out the details of the final design, but at this point, the intention would be to have a driveway. So there would be your laneway, you would have a driveway leading to either a detached garage or the potential for an attached garage via a breezeway, and that would have parking spaces in it. and in the driveway.
Go ahead, please.
And if I might, you talked about the possibility of a coach house probabilities at the back. How do you foresee that affecting parking?
So the lane product type, because of the ability to have, it's not intended for pedestrian access, it's intended for vehicular access. And so because of that, the entirety of that rear yard can be width-wise, can support parking, meaning those are some of the units that could likely have more than 2 parking spaces. They could have 2 in the driveway and could support 2 in the garage. So that would be contemplated if the individual future purchasers wanted to have a coach house.
Okay, so if that does indeed go ahead, we'll see a more detailed parking plan further down the road?
That's something that we can work on, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Crone, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you too, Ms. Pronk. Appreciate your presentation. And I'm going to pick up on the parking theme of my colleagues because I understand where they're coming from. This is I'm worried about the level of parking here. One car in the driveway, one in the garage. I can tell you, we have, and it's, the ward councillors are justifiably concerned about this because I know in my own ward where we have similar subdivisions, when you have one car in the driveway, one in the garage, the majority of the times, the garage is used for keeping boxes and storage materials, never a car. So that really leaves you one car. And then the on-street parking is great on a short-term basis, but then, in the winter when we have to clear the snow, that's a problem. So I would encourage you to find a more robust parking solution and for guest parking, because I can tell you this is going to be an issue. It became full front and center during the pandemic when the kids were coming home and there was not enough parking spaces for more than 2 cars. And so when you live in a community that is somewhat stranded like this, everyone has to have a car. So parking is going to be a big issue. And long after the builders are gone, the problem falls on our shoulders to take care of. So I would really encourage you to come up with some creative parking solutions. My second comment is on you mentioned about the trails and having in the woodlands, and I would encourage you that if you are to put in trails, do it as close as you can to the build of the subdivision, because we're going through a situation in another subdivision where it's about 10, 15 years later and we're building the trail now, and the residents don't remember that the trail was promised, and it's becoming problematic. So I think we could save a lot of future headaches if you try and do the trails and the build concurrently. Those are my comments. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? Councillor Leahy, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much to you, Madam Mayor. And I echo Councillor Crone's comments. In Ward 3, we have experience in terms of cluttered parking on streets, which can lead to safety issues, because what tends to happen, as Councillor Crone pointed out, that the garage is not used for parking, it's used for other items, and then people resort to paving over their lawns, their front lawns, and other measures that they take into their own hands in order to try and find parking. So I would suggest, as Councillor Crone did, that we follow up and perhaps consider a designated parking area to alleviate some of the parking on the streets that can lead to safety issues for pedestrians and children, and that in terms of the option of having the coach house, I think this is something else that we need to pay attention to, because of the potential of additional occupants on properties. So I have a follow-up question, Mayor, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, please.
We just referred in passing to 7 other phases. So this is phase 8, and this is a new application, as I understand it. In terms of the other 6 phases, have all of them been started? What are the stages of development of those other 6 phases, and how will they potentially impact phase 8?
Get through you, Mayor, to Councillor Leahy. Yeah, so there have been phases 1 through 6, which have all been draft approved and are in varying levels of registration and construction. So those are primarily located kind of northeast of the subject lands, so closer to Leslie. And as far as impacts or interconnection between the phases, our intention here is that we'll be able to capitalize on the potential to take a coordinated approach when it comes to these trails that we're talking about and some of the interconnection that we want to see between the phases. And so I think in this case, it will be to our benefit.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, and a follow-up question. And Phase 7, you mentioned Phase 1 through 6, and we're talking about Phase 8. What's Phase 7 all about?
Yeah, so Phase 7 is located a little bit further north, and there's ongoing site evaluation happening with those lands at this time. And so because Phase 8 already has servicing allocation assigned to it and is adjacent to lands that our client has just purchased, as I was talking about in the presentation, those lands that are located kind of northwest along Second Concession. Because of the proximity to those lands, it makes sense to advance Phase 8 at this point. Again, for the coordination piece between the two parcels, and go forward with Phase 8 in advance of Phase 7.
Councillor Johns, did you have questions tonight?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and sorry again that I can't be there in person, but thought it important that I be able to attend virtually, so thank you for the opportunity. I think that these are more comments to go on the record, given the fact that this is a public meeting, and I think that coming out of this fall election, I heard over and over and over again the opportunity and the desire for our existing residents to be able to catch our breath with the developments that are occurring. The fact is that we have communities that are being built that our school system is playing catch up to. We have challenges with sewer capacity, and essentially we're talking about parking spaces and we're talking about trails, but really what it's getting down to is protecting our quality of life. And I think that given the fact that we are on public record here, I think it's important to note that those items, that as we are building communities, what needs to be taken into consideration is that we are building complete communities. Councillor Carruthers spoke about the necessity for secondary commercial areas to help provide and sustain the residents that are here. And the fact is that as we are building new communities, the reality is that we are welcoming new residents without services, and nobody that I spoke to at the doors said that we need to shut everything down, but everybody said, can we please catch our breath and let the services catch up? And I urge the province and I through their planning, and I urge the region to be able to support through water, and I urge the school board to be able to support through the schools, and we will do our very best from the commercial side to move those amenities that we need. But I just want to go on record that we need to be catching our breath and being able to catch up to be able to serve the existing residents that we had. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'm now going to move to the public comments, and I would invite those that would like to speak to council to come forward to the microphone and let us know what are in your thoughts regarding this development that we've seen here tonight so far. Are there people who would like to speak to council?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we haven't received any particular virtual registration or registration for today, save and except for one individual who has requested to speak on 3 applications. The individual's name is Masood Esfahani. I believe they had indicated, no, okay, so they're indicating that they don't wish to speak on this application.
Thank you. We will move along with this application then. Be it resolved that Development Services Planning Branch Report DS 2023-09 dated March 21st, 2023, entitled Zoning Bylaw Amendments and Draft Plan of Subdivision Application, Queensville Properties Development Corporation, 1002 Doane Road, Queensville, Phase 8, File ZBA 2301, and 19T23001 be received, and that the presentation, written and verbal comments made during the statutory public meeting regarding zoning bylaw amendments and draft plan of subdivision applications, Queensville Properties Development Corporation, 1002 Doane Road, Queensville, Phase 8, File ZBA 2301, 19T23001 be received, and that comments presented at the statutory public meeting be addressed by Development Services Planning Branch in a comprehensive future report on a council meeting date. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Crone, Councillor LaHaye, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. The next item is I, statutory public meeting. And this is a public meeting, item 2, official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, draft plan of subdivision and site plan application, Holland Hope General Partners, Inc., 19349, 19357, 19365, and 19399 Yonge Street, file OPA 2201, ZBA 2202, 19T22001, and SPA 2208. The application overview and introduction from Manager Bégin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to call on our senior planner, Antonio Greco, to provide the planning context for this proposal.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, and all the public residents in attendance tonight. I'd like to reiterate that the purpose of tonight's meeting is to fulfill the requirements of the Planning Act, Section 17, subsection 15 for official plan amendments, and Section 34, subsection 14 for zoning bylaw amendments, to hold at least one public meeting to provide the public an opportunity to make representations in respect of the proposed applications. Every person who attends tonight's public meeting shall be given an opportunity to make representations in respect of the proposed applications, and any member of the public may also make written submissions regarding the applications. Any comments received tonight will be reviewed by staff through the ongoing technical review and addressed by the applicant where necessary. I'd like to reiterate that no formal decision will be made as part of tonight's statutory public meeting. Before us tonight is the official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, draft plan of subdivision, and site plan application, more commonly known as Holland Hope Development Project. Next slide, please. The subject property is located on the southeast corner of Yonge Street and Thompson Drive. The property has an area of approximately 1.5 acres, contains approximately 122 meters of frontage along Yonge Street, and 26.5 meters of frontage along Thompson Drive. There is currently a two-story single detached dwelling on 19349 Yonge Street and a one-story single detached occupying the other lots. I'd like to make note that the 19399 Yonge Street is also listed on our Cultural Heritage Registry. Next slide, please. The subject property contains an official plan designation of Village Core Area. The subject property is located within the local corridor and local center of Holland Landing as per Schedule A1 of the town's official plan. The subject lands are also within the town's urban area and the York Region's urban area. The Village Core Area may be zoned to permit a wide range of uses, such as retail stores, personal service shops, restaurants, business and professional offices, medical clinics, mixed-use residential units or apartments within commercial buildings, as well as institutional uses and open space. Next slide, please. The proposed official plan amendment currently outlines as read. Current official plan policy standards, section 4.3.3.2, subsection 2 and 3. The first policy is not exceed a floor index of 0.75 for non-residential development. The proposed amendment is the proposed maximum floor space index of 2.0 across the entirety of the subject lands. Proposed amendment number 2, subsection number 3, not exceed a density of 32 units per net hectare for residential development. The proposed amendment, the proposed maximum density per net hectare shall be 175 units. Next slide, please. The current zoning, mixed use 1 within the town's official town zoning bylaw 2018-043. The MU1 zone permits a wide range of medium-density residential housing forms, as well as a non-residential and commercial uses. Next slide, please. This slide outlines the proposed zoning for the entirety of the lands. The proposed zoning seeks a residential 4 exception zone within the town zoning bylaw. The below chart provides a comparison between the R4 bylaw requirements as written in the bylaw and the proposed bylaw requirements as set out by the applicant. The lot frontage within our current bylaw is 6 meters. The proposed bylaw requirements is 12.1.9 meters. The front yard setback as written in the town's bylaw is 4 meters. The proposed bylaw requirement is 1.47 meters. The rear yard setback as written in the town's bylaw is 7 meters. The proposal is 1.50 meters. The interior side yard setback as written in our bylaw is 0 meters, and the proposed is 0 meters. The exterior side yard setback as written in the town's bylaw is 2.4 meters, and the proposal is 0.54 meters. The maximum height, 12 meters as written in the town's bylaw. The proposed bylaw, 15.58 meters. Next slide, please. This slide provides an overview of the proposed draft plan of subdivision. The proposal seeks to develop a total of 97 residential stacked townhouse units. This development will be facilitated through the construction of 4-story stacked townhouse dwellings within 6 development blocks. The ground floor commercial on a portion of Building C, which is at the southeast corner of Thompson Drive and Yonge Street, with underground parking for the entirety of the lands and private laneway access on the subject site through Thompson Drive and as well as Yonge Street. I'd like to make note that Building C is proposed to be 5 stories in height. The remainder of the development is 4 stories. However, Building C is 5 stories in height. Next slide, please. Just for the record, Building C is the closest building to the southeast corner of Thompson Drive and Yonge Street, which is 19399 Yonge Street.
Could you refrain from asking questions until we finish the presentation, please?
Next slide, please. This is the conceptual elevations provided by the applicant in different variations of the west-east elevations for council's consideration. Next slide, please. The analysis, the application is currently under review by internal departments and external agencies. The following matters have been identified and will be addressed in a future recommendation report to council. So some of the things we will be analyzing is the consistency and conformity with provincial, regional, and local planning policies, the appropriateness and compatibility of the proposed development, the servicing allocation and capacity for the proposed development, traffic and circulation impacts, sensitivity analysis with Thompson Drive and the future connection to Silk Twist Drive, pedestrian and cyclist circulation, compatibility with the Holland Landing Young Street revitalization project, and the financial implications for the town of East Gwillimbury. Next slide, please. So I'd like to make note that at the time of preparing the report and presentation, we didn't receive any public emails or comments, but to make note that we have received various emails and comments on the proposal, both in support and in opposition for the development project. Next slide, please. Staff will conduct a technical review of the subject application, including discussion from today's public planning meeting. Staff will continue to comprehensively review the submitted official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, draft plan of subdivision, and site plan applications. Next slide, please. And thank you for tonight's presentation.
Thank you very much. I'd ask the applicant or the applicant's agent to come forward at this time, please. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, town staff, and members of the public.
We'll turn a microphone on for you.
Is that better? Yes,
That's
thank
better.
you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'll try it again. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, town staff, and the members of the public. My name is Jim Kotsopoulos, and I'm the planning agent on behalf of the owners. And Madam Mayor, before I get into the presentation, I just want to note that I have with me tonight a number of the owners that are here with me, and also a good part of our consulting team as well, in order to assist with any clarifications and/or questions that may arise. Thank you. Madam Mayor, I really don't want to repeat too much of what Mr. Greco has so eloquently stated in terms of our proposal, but I do want to emphasize some of my slides, if you will. Thank you so much. Can we go to the next slide, please? As Mr. Greco says, the lands are located, and there's a combination of 4 properties at the southwest corner of Yonge Street and Thompson Drive. And in terms of the surrounding context, Madam Mayor, you have the medium-density residential abutting to the east, you've got some commercial to the north, and then you've got some institutional and low-density residentials to the west and to the south. Next slide, please. And as Mr. Greco had then identified the dimensions of the properties, and Madam Chair, the four properties are currently accommodated via existing 4 single detached dwellings that are, in our opinion, varying degrees of condition. And the combination of the site location, Madam Mayor, including the condition of the properties, in our opinion, they are currently underutilized from a land use perspective, and that is also a very important aspect in terms of a go-forward basis. Next slide, please. So these are the condition of the existing dwellings on the property, and as Mr. Greco had identified, the upper left-hand corner, the existing property municipally known as 19399 Yonge Street is currently listed on the town's registry, but not registered, and I will elaborate on that specific issue with my following slides, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Next slide. And again, Mr. Greco has gone through this. If we can just keep going to the next one. These are, again, some of our numbers. Keep going. This is the official plan that Mr. Greco again identified. Next slide, please. This is the existing zoning, as Mr. Greco had identified. Next slide. So, Madam Mayor, this is, in terms of a short history, our current submission was formally made in March of 2022. We started this process in May of 2021 with a pre-consultation meeting with town staff. We came in formally with our applications in March of 2022. And Madam Mayor, I'm really glad to say that this process to date, and we're looking forward to the continuation, has been very collaborative. We've had many discussions with town staff, and we continue to have these discussions. We've also had discussions with the region of York, which I'll identify later. We've had some discussions, obviously, with some of you as well, specifically to talk about this project. And as Mr. Greco had identified, there are no decisions being made. We are continuing to discuss technical issues that are part and parcel of this process. We look forward to those discussions. And again, we look forward to the collaborative part of this process. So we had started, Madam Mayor, with this design in front here. And as a result, and if you can go to the next slide. Go back to the previous slide. So Madam Mayor, what you're looking is the initial application and the design at that time. And through, like I said, through discussions with town staff and input we had received from our meetings with town staff, we had discussed the look of the design of this of our initial submission, and that's what you see in front of you there. And it was a very modern, a very not so traditional form of design, and so we had a lot of feedback in that. And if we can keep going to the next slide. So one of the aspects, as Mr. Greco had notified, that this is a mixed-use designation on the lands. So the town's official plan looks for a potential incorporation of commercial space on the ground floor with residential above. So in order for us, in an effort to try to address this issue, Madam Mayor, we looked at that provision and we looked at the surrounding context in terms of what was there, and there's existing commercial to the north. However, we wanted to make sure that we diligently looked at this specific provision in the town's official plan. So what we did is we undertook a detailed commercial component assessment report, and we have the author of that report with us tonight, Mr. Tate. And as a result of that, Madam Mayor, the report came back identifying that there is already sufficient commercial development and uses within the surrounding area that even if we didn't put 1 square foot of additional retail, there will still be enough retail to accommodate the existing developments as well as the proposed residential development on these lands. However, Madam Mayor, we did not stop there. Again, in an effort to try to satisfactorily address this provision, we revised our original submission to incorporate a commercial component, and that specifically is going into, as somebody had asked, Building C, which is the ground floor of that corner building, which currently accommodates the property at 19399 Yonge Street. So, Madam Mayor, we are incorporating approximately 1,200 to 1,300 square feet of commercial space in order, again, to try to address the provisions of the town's official plan. So that's what we did. And in order for us to do that, we had to raise that Building C, which is that 6th building, we had to raise that by 1 story to 5 stories. And that's why you have the differential between the 4 stories on 90% of the development in accordance with the town's official plan, but the corner building, because we're incorporating the ground floor retail commercial component, we did raise it by 1 story. So again, Madam Mayor, we do have this report. It is with staff. It is part of the public record. And if anybody has any questions or clarifications, we'll be glad to discuss that with them. Next slide, please. And again, Madam Mayor, this is just an excerpt of the report that identifies that there is enough commercial space currently in place. Next slide, please. So Madam Mayor, this one, and this is what I wanted to emphasize as well. So I showed you the original concept that was submitted in March of 2022, and then through input received from town staff and also other interested parties, we did revise with our second submission back in August of 2022, and we came back with a more traditional design, which you see before you there. And that's currently what's in front of town staff for consideration today, is that version. And if next slide, please. And again, this just gives you different perspectives. Next slide, please. So Madam Mayor, I do want to just stall on this one here. As Mr. Greco had identified the numbers in terms of what the bylaw requires and what we're proposing, I wanted to concentrate on the building height. Mr. Greco identified that the building height in the bylaw is 12 meters, and he showed a proposal of 15.58. But Madam Mayor, the 15.58, that stands out because that is specifically only required for the building 6, which is that isolated building that contains the commercial component. The rest of the 90% of the site, Madam Mayor, if you take it from the ground, I'm talking about the other buildings, they come in, if you take it to the peak of the roof, they come in at a height of about 12.20. So I just want everybody to realize the perspective. So 90% of our building height is 12.20. Yes, Mr. Greco's right. We do show 15.58, but that is strictly for that cupola design that you see right at the intersection of Thompson and Yonge Street. So I want to clarify that for everybody's understanding. Next slide, please. So, Madam Mayor, one of the aspects that yet another issue that came up, this was our original landscape submission for the first submission, and we were getting comments, Madam Mayor, about obviously our relationship, particularly with the lands, abutting lands to the east, and you can see the strip. So we went back, Madam Mayor, and we did expand that easterly landscape strip, and to meet the town's requirement of 3 meters. However, there's still a minor pinch point in the middle, to the left, sorry, of the middle, that is a little bit less than 3 meters. However, if you go to the next slide, we through our diligent discussions with the town's urban design and park staff, Madam Mayor, we did create a landscape plan that, and you could see on the right-hand side, some of the proposed species of trees that we feel would be appropriate under this type of circumstance. So again, Madam Mayor, we are diligently looking at some of the concerns expressed to us, and this is specifically about the landscape buffer to the abutting lands to the east. And this is still a discussion that's ongoing, as Mr. Greco said, as part of our technical issues to be resolved. Next slide, please. So, Madam Mayor, one of the other issues that Mr. Greco talked about is traffic. So you could see here, this is our traffic study plan. We have the 2 access points. One is the south access onto Yonge Street, and then our north access is onto Thompson, and the idea is obviously to circulate through the site. Through discussions, Madam Mayor, with the region of York, specifically for our Yonge Street access, the region of York has asked us to look at what is called a restricted access onto Yonge Street for a couple of reasons. One is the proximity to the other street on the west, and also about the actual width of Yonge Street. So we have now designed our Yonge Street access as a restricted right in, right out, with the Thompson Drive access that's to be determined still as a full movement. So on the basis of those two designs, Madam Mayor, our traffic studies indicated that the level of service based on the number of people to be generated by our proposal will still not create a negative impact in terms of the traffic circulation and the number of trips to be generated. Next slide, please. So the traffic impact on the surrounding road network, we went to the horizon year of 2029, Madam Mayor. Overall, the surrounding road network is expected to operate well during horizon year 2029, and Holland Hope development has a minimum impact to the surrounding intersections from a traffic generation perspective. Next slide, please. And this is the underground parking, Madam Mayor. We are providing a total of 118 underground parking spaces in conjunction with 65 bicycle parking spaces, which is obviously well in excess of the town's minimum requirement for bicycle parking. And we're within 5% in terms of the parking required versus the parking provided by this development. Next slide, please. So the last issue, Madam Mayor, is back to the property known as 19399 Yonge Street. As we advised, and as Mr. Greco had advised, Madam Mayor, that is currently listed but not registered. So as a result of that issue, Madam Mayor, we obtained the services of a qualified heritage architect, and what we did is we prepared a detailed cultural heritage impact assessment study that is been submitted to the city, to the town. The town has that. And Madam Mayor, for your information, we did present that study and its findings to the town's Heritage Committee back in August of 2022. And at that meeting, they were in agreement that the findings of this report state that the existing condition of that dwelling does not qualify it, as far as we're concerned and as the heritage consultant is concerned, to be able to seek formal designation. And now we are awaiting, the next step, Madam Mayor, would be for council to actually endorse that decision. Next slide, please. And again, that's, and there's the heritage, that's the conclusion, just for everybody's benefit, if they want to see the report, but that is the conclusion identified in the report. So, Madam Mayor, those are my comments, and that's my presentation, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you, and again, we look forward to the continued collaborative review process that is ongoing with the town, and again, I have a number of my consultants here, and we'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Questions from members of council? Go ahead, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I guess I get to start this one off. So, through many meetings with Councillor Crothers and myself, I'm sure that a lot of the people in attendance here have the same opinions. So I'm hoping that when you leave here tonight, you're going to realize you've got a lot of work to do on this submission. I have to admit, it's the first time I heard anybody try to sell us on the fact that bicycle parking was higher than we wanted as far as cars. Again, just to reiterate some of the conversations I've had with some of your staff, the entry and exit to the property, in my mind, has a lot of work to be done. The overall density of the property certainly has a lot of work to be done, and I hope that you'll certainly take this one step further and have a meeting for the public in the area, perhaps at the library, the community center, and the landing. And I think you may have more people come out that are here tonight. And hopefully the good and bad points can be discussed better in a one-on-one maybe than in this forum. So I think that's what needs to be done, but certainly there are lots of things to be done with this one. And one thing that I haven't mentioned in any of our previous meetings, some of the renderings that you have up there with high, multi-story buildings in the background and stuff, just to me makes it look worse, because there's nothing out there at that point yet. So I think they need to be worked on also. Thank you.
I'll just remind people that we're going to take as much input as we can, but calling out from the audience is not appreciated. We can't get the information down. Better to take this opportunity, and I'm just going to say that I'm going to ask individuals to refrain from clapping and interrupting members of council during their commenting period. But now is the opportunity for public comments, and if speakers would like to give their name and address and come to the microphone, we're here to listen.
I guess I am.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed this side of my council.
Yes, I'm not.
I went right instead of left. Go ahead, and then we will have members of the public here to say a few words. Go ahead,
Thank you.
please.
You're not going to
My
silence me on
apologies.
this one, that's for sure. We've been in discussion with this developer, as you've said, Jim, since March of 2022. I'm still waiting on that shadow study that you promised me almost a year ago. Apparently, you have it, but you're willing to share it, but we have not seen it yet. There's so many concerns with this that have not been addressed. The exit onto Thompson, Councillor Foster has raised a number of these. There's not enough parking, except for bicycles. The lack of professional and retail space, and the study that you produce basically tells everyone that they should go to Bradford. As you've heard, we are looking for walkable communities. No one's walking to Bradford or to Sharon to do their shopping. That's why we're saying that we need more professional retail space in this development so that people can walk there. Over the setback limits, over the height limits, there's lack of elevators within the building. There's lack of space to put snow, which will then cause problems for our emergency services if they have to get in there after a snowfall. The lack of setbacks is just something that I find I can't get past that. I think that we know that people need affordable housing. We know that land values are going up, so we need density, but not like this. This is not what the bar that the town is setting for what we want to see in our town. This doesn't meet that bar. We have one chance to get development right, because once the building's there, it'll be there forever. And we want to make sure that we get this right, and it's not there yet. And I think that when you hear from our residents, you'll hear why they're not in favor of this. Thank you.
Councillor Crone, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I just have a point of clarification? I've seen two names for this. Is it Holland Hope or is it Holland Park? Because I saw two names on the same presentation. What are we going by here on this one? Just so I don't.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, the project did come in as Holland Hope. However, we were told about the historical aspects of it, so the current version of the project is Holland Park.
So you've lost hope. Thank you. I'm here all week. I'm sorry. I like the concept, but I hate the location. It's I share my colleagues' concerns about the density issues. We're talking about putting 97 units in where 4 homes were before. And it's you're tightly packed in there, guys. That's a lot of people. You heard the tittering in the crowd when you talked about the traffic study. I'm not sure people are buying it. I think you may need to step up your rigor around the traffic, because I can see that being a big, big issue. And I'm not even sure it fits in aesthetically with the rest of the neighborhoods. So I think that's going to be a challenge for you. It's, you know, you went to great length about talking about the 5 stories in the one building. Well, you didn't have to go to 5, but you pushed it up because of a commercial element. You could have sacrificed a level. You chose not to. Just looking at my notes here. You know, I would share Councillor Foster's suggestion about a public meeting. I think we got a lot of people out here tonight that shows that there is concern in the neighborhood. We need to, as councillors, I think we need to listen to that concern and respond to it. And I think a public meeting in Holland Landing would be appropriate. You've got a lot of, I'll be honest with you, you have a lot of work to do, and at this point, I would have a hard time supporting this as it is now. I like the concept, I hate the location. I think you've got some work to do. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Just an advisement, I know we have people standing at the back. We do have an overflow room set up downstairs for those wishing to view it. The cameras and everything are in there, so if you want to head down there, there are seats down there as well. Councillor Johns, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think, you know, a lot of challenges always stem from communication and then also relationships. And I think that for me joining council new, and I haven't had the opportunity to be able to meet with the proponents here tonight, and I do look forward to the opportunity to do that. The whole process feels abrasive to me, and the reason why I say that is, you know, Councillor Crone spoke about the name change, Holland Hope, and then like, okay, we all recognize in the community. I've grown up here. I've been here all my life. I recognize that Hope is in Sharon. Well, that's really not a big deal. If it's Holland or Holland Hope or whatever, it's not a big deal. But it is a big deal. It is a big deal to us because it means from the get-go, from when you registered your company name, you didn't know the community. And so when you call out being able to go 5 stories, I get that, but to Councillor Crone's point, you could have went 4. And, you know, having a public meeting in town and getting to know folks, that's important. And I spoke about in the last segment there, I spoke about protecting our quality of life. You know, I picture growing up and watching sunsets, and I'm looking at the lots behind this thing, and there's 20 lots back there. If you're sitting there having a barbecue or watching a sunset, that doesn't happen. And Councillor Carruthers called out a shadow study. Well, if we have it, let's see it. Like, let's be upfront and be transparent. Like, if we are truly partners in building great communities, then we need to know each other, and we need to, like, listen, the name thing, it's not a big deal, but it actually does personify what the relationship should be, or the challenge in what the relationship is and what it should be. And I think, like, sitting down and having a cup of coffee with somebody at a public meeting in Holland Landing and talking about the fact that, you know, folks have been there for 30 years and we recognize the community is changing, but we have to protect our quality of life, because how is it fair to the existing residents that are here now? We have to protect our quality of life while we're growing. And I will stay steadfast in that, and I will support that to the end. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We are now on to the public component portion of the agenda. There are approximately 15 registered speakers for tonight's meeting. I'll ask the municipal clerk to call on the individuals.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we have a combination of virtual and in-person registration for tonight's meeting. Just wanted to advise that some individuals have joined tonight's meeting via the MS Teams. So without any particular order, what I'm going to do is call out individuals that have requested to speak on this application. Your first speaker of the night is Mike Mora. If Mike could come to this podium, that'd be great. Thank you.
Good evening, Mike. Good to have you with us.
Good evening, Your Honor and Council. I'm a 32-year resident of Holland Landing, and I love the village, and I've loved the way it's developing, the Nokita Trail. and the history behind it, the fact that it was once a fur trading and a hunting, as depicted by the canoe at the foot of the Nokita Trail. I have some concerns regarding the proposals with the widening of Yonge Street. It really is of no benefit to traffic. It's really just a merge lane for the building applicant. I also have concerns about the windrows, the setback at 1.47 meters. That's literally 5 feet. Is that from the front face of the bump-out balconies, or is that from the front face of the brick? Where does the snow go? How about school bus drop-off pickup? Is there adequate snow areas that they depict a couple of small triangles on the interior for snow storage? That doesn't look adequate to me. People will be making a forced left-hand turn onto Thompson. With the extended width of Yonge Street, that offsets the intersection. Now they're crossing Kitty Corner, and there has major hydro poles on the other side. Apparently, at some point in time, there may be a daycare across the street from it. Thompson Drive, which is now, it's going to go through continuous at some point in the future. That's going to add to the traffic. Right now, the only east-west between the 404 and Bradford is through Mount Albert and Old Yonge and making a left onto Bradford. That is the only east-west. Until the 404, 400 bypass is built, the traffic there already is getting a little bit much. This proposed plan with a left-hand turn with 75 feet of frontage, you may get 2 or 3 cars before they're already stacked back. At 7 o'clock in the morning, when folks are leaving for work from this underground parking lot, they have to leave on the left-hand side to go southbound towards Newmarket. I don't know how they're going to stack up on an offset intersection. The rooftop terraces, they talk about how tall is the parapet wall. Is there a problem? Will things fly off onto the street? They've talked about the beautification of our little, it's less than a kilometer long, that little stretch. The original hotel is going to be directly across the street from these buildings. I'm not against housing. If you want a precedent, if you look at what was happened with the original public schoolhouse at School and Peter Street, it was knocked down, and they built 29 townhouses in that area, and it blends perfectly with the surroundings. It's a gorgeous addition, as well as the original townhouses that were built just north of Mount Albert on the east side. Now, that may not be a great usage of the land, but it's a template, it's a precedence. You can have a look at how that was designed and say, well, can we apply the same style here, as well as some minor commercial in the front. I have a vision of a bike trail going from Doan Road, where the new walkway is, across the marsh, going all the way down our beautiful little street, hooking up with the Nokita Trail, with benches, hanging plants, and beautifying. In closing, at any rate, I'm sorry I'm nervous. Please make decisions to amplify and beautify our less than 1 kilometer stretch of our community pride, to incorporate housing and possibly small retail to accent the already wonderful and established businesses, to bring attention to the historical significance as a former fur trading post and milling site dealing with local and indigenous peoples, recognized by the installment of a beautiful canoe in front of the Nokita Trail. The same attention should be given to the preservation of the old courthouse at Mount Albert and Old Yonge, the original hotels and merchants' houses, which would be directly across the street from the build site, as well as numerous other historic buildings. Please beautify our village, as well as Mount Albert and Sharon, but with a sensitivity to our past, to move forward into the future and continue to evolve our communities to the envy of everyone. please have responsible development. Thank you.
You did a great job. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, your next speaker is Alan Belinsky.
Well,
Welcome.
thank you, and I can tell everyone here I am nowhere near that well prepared to speak. I'm a resident on Oak Ridge Court, so this development has a pretty big impact on our lives and what we see and what we do. I'm a businessman. I understand that our town needs to grow. I understand that we need to develop. Being a businessman, I do a bit of math. So 97 units, probably going to be 4 people per unit, roughly. Yeah, well, that's the point. So you're going to put 400 people. From my understanding, a city block is 100 meters. They're talking about 122 meters. That's a block and a half for 400 people. Average household, I ran a car dealership, better have 2 cars. There's nowhere near parking for those cars. The whole plan seems to be lacking on infrastructure. It doesn't seem like a well thought out plan. I understand they probably paid a lot of money for those homes, for the land, and I understand they want ROI, they want return on their investment. But there is a cost to that. I haven't heard anything about any planning for any damage to our existing homes. After they build, we get water in the basement. I guess that's our problem. I haven't heard any contingency or anything from any of them about compensation for the existing residents. And quite honestly, I was shocked. They came by when I wasn't home, and I guess they were trying to glad hand and whatever, but there's no provision there. And I'm sure the town, if I call the town because I have 5 feet of water in my basement because of something that happened on the build, isn't going to say, no problem, Mr. Belinsky, we have that covered. Here's $100,000. But I think they better come up with a pretty substantial fund for any damage that is done. And again, how long is this going to take once shovels go on the ground? How many years of 7 o'clock in the morning am I going to hear construction, banging, clanging, et cetera, et cetera? So I'm very impressed. I've never been to a council meeting. I've never spoken at one before, but I'm very impressed with the entire council and the questions. And I had all full of fire when I came today, figuring out the council's just going to glad hand this and blah, blah, blah. And I honestly have a lot of faith in all of you to make sure this is done right. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Alan. You did a great job, even if you didn't have a script with you. Thank you. We got the message.
Madam Mayor, the next registered speakers are actually joining us virtually. It's Dave and Linda Gingrich.
So they will be up on one of these screens, or both of these screens when we get connected with them.
Yes, it just appears that they may be on mute. So let's just see if we can assist them. Dave, Linda, are you able to hear us? It appears that you're on mute, so you just need to unmute yourself.
Yes, we can hear you.
Welcome. Good to have you with us tonight. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. My name is Dave Gingrich. I'm here with my wife, Linda, and we live at 9 Thompson Drive in Holland Landing. We're the first house and the first driveway off the corner of Yonge Street. We are going to be directly impacted by this so-called development within there. We understand that East Gwillimbury is really concerned about trying to modify and trying to revitalize Yonge Street. They see our corner and this corner at Yonge Street as the downtown of Holland Landing. We can't understand why this high-density center that is being proposed would even fit into that particular homey, friendly environment that we believe our town is working towards. The sheer number of people in close proximity to that major intersection of downtown presents a few issues, in our opinion. Number one is safety. The slowing of traffic, accessing this number of units, and increasing congestion on Yonge Street and creating a less safe environment. And furthermore, I believe that their exit is going to go right beside my property, down my fence line where my garage is right now and retaining wall is. And we have trouble backing out of our driveway now with being that close to the corner. I can't see it even being possible. You know, get out of our driveway without having difficulties. And to reiterate what was already talked about, making a left-hand turn from Thompson is going to be just unbelievable. So I can see a lot of people making right-hand turns and then doing a U-turn through the plaza. And it's just, the whole logistics of this is just mind-boggling. The extra point too that I'd like to make is privacy. The height of that structure itself we have a second-story deck on our house, and we can see the sunset. We won't be able to see that with 5 stories looking towards Yonge Street. And, you know, it's going to overshadow all the other residents within that particular area and reduce the privacy in all the backyards too. The other question I had for the developer, there's been no indication that there would be any property management involved there, meaning that how are they going to ensure that when we look out from our backyard or from our second-story deck, that we're not looking at a conglomeration of garbage out there, conglomeration of dumpsters, whatever. We just can't even fathom that. My wife Linda would like to make a few comments now too.
My husband and I moved to East Gwillimbury as empty nesters 22 plus years ago with the intention of making this our retirement home and to never move again. Dave has renovated our home to prepare for senior living, and our backyard oasis was fish pond, waterfall, gardens were all built by us, the two of us. We have made it the way we want it for years ahead of us, and we love it, and we love our neighborhood. We've enjoyed our neighborly community where people walk and by and say hello on their way to the mailbox or to local businesses, and we agree that there needs to be a lot done to revitalize our downtown Holland Landing area, especially there. But in our opinion, this is just not the answer. This sort of high-density housing will result in large volumes of traffic, as my husband has said, and going to and fro and in and out of the development, compromising our small town atmosphere. This sort of high-density development encroaches on our quiet enjoyment of our property, and it will decrease the privacy of our backyard sanctuary. We realize that there will be a sacrifice to pay for the end result for whatever goes into that property. There will be some uncomfortable days during any construction phase, no matter what is decided. However, a construction development of this magnitude will bring noise, dust, pounding, and a lot of mess for longer than we want to endure. We fear that the impact on our property value will be negative, and as such, we contest the building of these sorts of 4-story stacked townhouses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave and Linda. We appreciate your comments.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the next speaker of tonight's meeting has joined virtually as well. The name is Michael Moradian.
Are you there, Michael?
Perhaps we can move along to the next speaker. So the next speaker that we have on the list is Sandra Pettifer.
Good evening, Sandra. Good to have you with us tonight.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and councillors and town staff and fellow residents. So I'm going to be brave here because I do support this project, not in its entirety, so don't everybody beat me up yet. But my name is Sandra Pettifer. I have an interest in the Holland Park project on Yonge Street, Thompson Drive. As a local resident of 22 years, I raised my family on Anchor Court, and my kids are now full grown. I also am a resident of a commercial building. I'm a real estate broker, Urban Life Realty in Sharon. So I'm supportive of this project for the following reasons. The redevelopment of Yonge Street in the sense that it needs a modern update. I know there's revitalization project going on in town, and the community around Yonge Street has grown significantly, like Doan Road, houses that are off of Samuel Lant, like there is a lot of houses. And the thing is that they're all very, high end. There isn't a lot of the missing middle, which is, affordable housing for people. Like my kids couldn't live in Hall Landing. They couldn't afford to move out and buy their own property in Hall Landing. They had to drive outside of that area. And we love our community. I mean, I love living there, and I loved walking into town. So I can see how people are concerned about, the amount of density. But there is, a push for intensity and building more affordable housing all over Ontario. So Hall Landing is going to be impacted by that as well. We need places to live for people who are first-time home buyers and people who are downsizing. So I do think that the retail like the existing retail and commercial people that have occupied those units. I remember when the RBC Bank was there and they had to leave. Like there has to be enough people in a community to support the businesses and all of the community. This trail system is amazing, and we want to get a pool in town, and we want to build our community, and we need people. And so, maybe not this many people, and I don't know enough about what the density looks like, but I'm thinking there's maybe 1 to 2 people that are going into each of these units and not 3 or 4. And I'm going to propose that a lot of those people being first-time home buyers or downsizers may have 1 car and use the transit. So maybe there won't be as much traffic, but I'm not sure. Like, I just don't know enough about that to speak to it. I also think that this is an infill site, so it does allocate for some sewer allocation because it is part of the, development that allows for sewer allocation in areas of infill. So I do believe that that is part of what's supposed to be in that area. I just know that at this point, we need to build some more homes because a lot of our new home buyers, there's just nowhere for me to put them in this area. And I'm supportive for the project for that reason. And I think that this project offers a wide range of possibilities to many of us who live and work in this area. So I do know that there's some work to be done. I understand that, and I'm listening to everybody's comments, so I can appreciate that, being a resident in Hall Landing as well. My in-laws lived on Oak Ridge Court, Barbara and Warren Pettifer, for many, many years. So many of you know them. And so we understand how that's going to impact the people that are in behind. But I just want people to be open-minded and maybe, try to work this through to see if there's something we can do to accommodate, the need for housing and also satisfy the public. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
Through you, Madam Mayor, your next speaker is Mahnaz Bustani, which has joined us virtually for tonight's meeting.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
A little bit. Could you turn up the volume at all?
Sure, yeah. Is that good now?
Well, if you could talk a little louder, maybe that would work too.
Yeah, sure. So, hello everybody. I'm a resident of Holland Landing, and I'm a business owner as well here. So, every day we actually, when there are a lack of many needs in this area, like gas station, banks, coffee shops, and other retails, and people have to go to Bradford or Newmarket just because there is nothing in this area. And we know that it doesn't make sense for business, actually, like those businesses to have a branch here because actually it doesn't make sense because there are no young people here, and so most residents here are old people, and their interest is totally different. Yeah, believe me, for everything I have to go to Newmarket, like fresh bakeries, for coffee shop. Sometimes I like to sit down in a coffee shop and have coffee with my friends, and nothing is here. So, and the other thing is that with this kind of development, these units are more affordable, and especially young people can afford them because housing prices are really high these days. So I do support these projects, and I think we need this kind of projects and even more in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the next speaker for tonight is Dallin Can. I apologize if I have not pronounced the name correctly. Dallin or Dallin Can? Oh, through you, Madam Mayor, we do have an overflow in the Hall Landing Room. There are about approximately 11 individuals, so they're just making their way up to the podium right now.
Good evening. Good to have you with us.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say. Like I've learned a lot tonight. My main issue that I'm concerned about is the affordability of housing in any new developments. Because like as most people know, we're in a housing crisis and food insecurity is on the rise, and like there's just very few options for folks to actually have affordable and secure housing. So that's where my main focus is. And I do understand a lot of the concerns around traffic and parking spots and safety driving, and also the infrastructure, especially like schooling. So I guess that's also what I'm concerned about is the infrastructure, especially transit. Like I don't think it's super fair to put everything on the development of like, we need to make sure there's room for all the cars. What about if we made the transit system better so people didn't need a car, and people could bike more? So that's sort of where I'm coming from. Because as I believe someone on the council said today, that you need a car to live here, and that is true, unfortunately, right now, but it doesn't have to be. So I think that sort of, that could be a good focus, is to actually look at the solutions outside of the development as well. But there is a lot of work that needs to happen for this development, in my opinion. And also, I forgot to mention, I do live on Oak Ridge Court, and my backyard does face where this development would happen, so it would be right there. But from my perspective, the additional housing for folks, especially working class people, is more important for me than like my backyard view. That's just my personal opinion. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the next speaker of tonight is Tahir Khambada. Tahir, are you in the room? Okay. The next speaker is Ben Taronko.
Good evening, Ben. Good to have you with us.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, members of the public. Thank you for having me here today. I'm here to speak to regards to the project development that's proposed between 19349 and 19399 Yonge Street. I have a few concerns with regards to the proposed rezoning and the current site plan application. I'm going to keep it short. My first point is our current education system. Our current public schools in Holland Landing are already overburdened to capacity and heavily understaffed and underfunded. My eldest is currently packed away like a sardine in a classroom about the size 1/20th of this room, and with no alleviation in sight. I'm not sure how zoning 97 additional family dwellings will alleviate the problem, but I think it'll just add. Next, not so much the thing, but this is the personal side of it. As a resident of Oak Ridge Court, a mix of these developmental mixture, commercial / residentials at this location, I feel is too small a space, such as like what my neighbor Al said. You're putting over 400 people approximately in a space of 120 meters. Nobody thinks about or talks about the displaced current residents that are living at those locations at the moment. I think their lives are more heavily affected than anybody else, but we just kind of put a brush it to the side. As far as housing affordability goes, I don't know who in this world thinks that these units are going to be affordable. I figure, given the going market rate, I'm sorry, that's just the way it is in this day and age. Not only this, but as everybody saw the driving plans, the traffic plans, it would only cause an increase in vehicle traffic and pollution from vehicles. How will garbage collection works in these tight areas? I don't want to stare at garbage cans through my backyard. Basically, the second half of my day is overshadowed by 2 hours of sun, at which point it disappears. You add 5-story, 4-story condos behind that, I have no afternoon sun, period. Now, the biggest factor I want to bring up and mention is the health and safety aspect of it and the infrastructure of our town. Increasing this area by 97 residential units will cause a significant amount of live vehicular traffic, added strain, and overutilization in our already understaffed, underfunded emergency services. Holland Landing is currently staffed by 1 ambulance. In the York Region Paramedic Services 2021-2031 Master Plan, there is a net increase of 1 ambulance that will be allocated to all of East Gwillimbury, which means that there's no guarantee that it's coming to Holland Landing. It could be Mount Albert, it could be Sharon too. Again, what does this mean and what's my point? What this means is it's an added strain to your local paramedic service to the public. Consider this. If the ambulance that is in Holland Landing is in service, the next closest available ambulance is located at 135 Aspenwood Drive, Newmarket. That's behind the Walmart on Yonge Street. What does that mean? That means that if you're having an emergency in seconds count, it's going to take my coworkers and myself upwards of 14 minutes to get to the northernmost resident of Holland Landing, putting residents in danger. South Lake is already overburdened and at capacity. The expansion isn't slated to open until 2031 at the very earliest, and that's a very generous estimate. I observe and participate in the never-ending hallway medicine with my own eyes on a regular basis. The closest thing Holland Landing currently has to real medical care is a pharmacy and a closet, where you may or may not have access to a physician, depending on the day. Otherwise, you're driving to Sharon, Newmarket, or Bradford. And by the way, the Sharon Medical Clinic, yeah, they're full, there's a waiting list. Good luck. I'm not against growth and development. However, a project of this magnitude in such a small plot of land is not the right place and most certainly not the right time for Holland Landing right now. Thank you.
Through Madam Mayor, your next speaker is Ryan McCluskey.
Welcome. Good to
Thank
have you
you.
with us.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'd first like to commend all of you for voicing, I think, many of the same concerns that all of us here have today, and also plainly just being blunt. This is a major concern for the community. We ask you to do a thorough review and as well be honest with your opinions as we build a future. We have, as Councillor mentioned, an ability and an opportunity to really recreate and build a new identity for our community. And at this point in time, forcing a giant development into our plan is counterproductive and ultimately dangerous. So I'd like to voice and echo many of the same concerns that we discussed today. My name is Ryan McCluskey, and I am a resident of Hall Landing, close to this development. I'd first like to state that I am pro-development, especially when it comes to the revitalization of Hall Landing Core. However, just as the town's strategic plan, we need to do so responsibly. This is not simply a townhome development that we've learned even greater today. This is a 90-unit stacked townhome condominium, including an 8-unit apartment building over unspecified commercial space, which we've now learned what that commercial space might be. Reviewing the R4 zone parking requirements, a minimum of 2 spaces per townhome and 1 space per apartment unit is required. This yields 188 parking spaces, and visitor parking needs to be provided at a rate of 0.25. This yields an additional 24 spaces, and in total, a minimum of 212 parking spaces is required just for the residential portion of this development. Only a total of 118 spaces is being proposed for the entire development, not including the business portion. I ask, where will the cars go? Where would they park? They will park on residential streets. With a lack of amenities and infrastructure in the area, it is irresponsible to have a dense of a development in a residential area. New residents will have to drive to meet their needs, and it is naive to expect our current public transit system will offer relief and or even be used. There is simply not enough space and will cause a major safety concern with added congestion on our streets. For the proposed laneways, especially on Thompson Drive, which we have discussed quite thoroughly here today, it is far too close to the intersection, potentially causing real safety concerns with not enough room for cars to travel through the intersection while vehicles enter or exit the development. As for Yonge Street, the intersection, the strip of road is extremely busy during rush hour, especially during summer months. With another traffic light be placed there in the entrance to help this flow of traffic. Unfortunately, Hall Landing has turned into a way-through, a route for commuters to beat traffic heading towards Bradford. This development will only add to the congestion and commuter frustration during peak times. And as a local resident, I am very concerned about local traffic for even the cars that are there today and those coming through my residential streets in the future. Again, I look forward to the revitalization of Hall Landing and the proper development of my community. I just fear the proposal as it stands is far too large for the space, only adding congestion and safety risks to our streets. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the next speaker is Rick Faraci.
Good evening, Rick. Good to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Madam Mayor, members of council, staff, and guests, my wife and I moved to Holland Landing over 6 years ago and chose York region for the following reasons. Medical attention, including quick accessibility to hospitals and doctors. Emergency services, police, fire, ambulance are all outstanding. We would like to stress a low crime rate compared to other municipalities in our province. Positive growth to include residential, commercial, and industrial. Current and future highway expansion to the City of Toronto. East Gwillimbury's positive finances, which we applaud council and staff for, as there are very few communities within our province who have zero debt. We must declare that we are pro-development within reason. We were well aware when we moved to Beckett Avenue 6 years ago that we were going to have 500 new neighbors, and that's just the number of dwellings that started right next door to us. So there's well over 2,000 people. We welcome them. The province of Ontario has a growth has a growth plan relating to residential expansion, which we fall within. A developer has a goal to maximize construction per square foot onto a parcel of land. Build, sell, move on to the next project. The community members remain behind to enjoy the project or deal with issues which have transformed. If we do not engage in some fashion on this property, we could be in the same current position with this intersection 5 years down the road with no progress made to advance. We ask for a compromise between the developer, council, and the concerned public. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the next speaker of the night is Raja Yu. The last name wasn't fully written out in the form.
Good evening. Good to have you with us tonight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council and public team and everybody. I have no beneficial or interest or anything on this project. So thank you for giving an opportunity. Half of the time I'm looking at you, half of the time I'm looking at some of the people here, nodding their head the left and right all the time, including some of the people here. I understand everybody's pain. It is very important. If I were you, I will do the same thing. I will come here and object. But one thing we all need to understand, change is inevitable. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, everybody said internet is not a good thing, and people are going to steal my information and everything. But look what we are doing. All our parents are talking with the people, or children, remotely, and a lot of people are attending. So we all need to embrace the situation and the change, which is inevitable. So, and someone actually said, when we build a building here, it is going to be permanent. I agree. When we build something, it is going to be there 20, 30, hopefully more than that. That's why it's very important to judge our plan carefully. We don't want to have a two big buildings or two small buildings also, because once we build, it is there. So 10 years from now, we don't want to regret, oh, I wish I would have done that. I wish I have more density or less density, whatever it is. So it is very important. We all need to be, plan carefully, like someone said earlier. And someone also said, very close by, there's a townhouses, beautiful townhouses. Why don't they do it here also? Which is, I agree. But we all need to remember, townhouses right now, $1 million, $1.2 million. Yes, it is easy, including myself, stand here and sit here and say many things, but there are a lot of people out there, they don't have that $1 million to purchase a townhouse. They don't even have a $500,000 to purchase a house. Where will they live? It is very important. We have a share, fortunately, we have some money, but a lot of people not there. So it is very important for all of us to think not only for ourselves or our family members, which is like 3 to 4 people, but there is a tens of millions of people out there, they don't have accommodation. We should also think from their point of view also. I agree, I think if I'm not mistaken, for every $1 million to purchase a home, you need to have a $200,000, $300,000 income. Let's be honest, stats, probably $100,000, $150,000 per annum on average, maximum, if in a good case. So even the good employer, good city employer, good people who are making lots of money, they cannot even afford a townhouse of $1 million. So they have two options. One is they stay outside, which potentially causes the crime, like another person mentioned, or find a solution who can able to provide a solution so that they can able to find a house within their own budget. Okay? So someone said something about the density. Yeah, you know what, I agree. But people, this is a young street. Last time when I went there to downtown Toronto, people, they're talking about 20 times, 30 times. People, government, everybody is very supportive because people want to grow. Government want to grow their town. That's why they're supporting there. But here, I don't remember the numbers, but something like 1.52, which again, I get it, this area potential may be high, low, whatever it is, but let's not build a house based on what is today needed. Let's build something based on 10 years, 20 years from now. That's what we need to focus on. And someone said pointedly, losing a hope. Yeah, I think it's kind of a joke, but yes, this is losing a hope. For people who don't have money and hoping to get something reasonable, affordable house, they're losing a hope. It is city council or people need to step up and say, guys, there's a lot of other people don't have money to purchase a house. This is the project. You are looking to do something for people who don't have money, and you actually giving a hope to those people. So I sincerely think this is actually giving hope to some people, 90 other families, which in my opinion. And like I said, some people said emergency and we don't have many facilities. I get it, right? If I have something happens, if I had to wait a half an hour to get my emergency vehicle, probably by the time God only knows what happens to me. But why are we not getting, why don't we have enough ambulances here? Why there's so many ambulances in Toronto? Why there is so many hospitals out there? Why not here? Right? Obviously, city or government wants to give more based on the density. So yeah, it's kind of catch-22 situation. If we don't have people, they ignore us. If if you have too many people, then what if they don't give? But it's very important is people out there, south side, they have lots of hospital for a reason, because there's a lot of density there, a lot of people are living there. So someone said we're losing businesses here, which is true. More people you get, more businesses to come. Everybody work together, grow together, right? And someone said property values going down. I disagree. We're all working as a one family. We're all working, grow together, build together. Like, think about this, Toronto or Richmond here. I remember someone said 20, 30 years ago that horses are running on 401 or a Young Street on Richmond Hill. That's true. At that time, there's not much growth. But today, there is so much growth. So here, do we want to think like, this area to grow so slowly that nobody wants to come? No, that's not the case. City Council wants this place to grow fast, more people to come here, live together, right?
Excuse me, this is a public meeting, and this gentleman is in front of us, and we're listening to him. Please be respectful.
Yeah,
and perhaps you could wrap up.
Yeah, whatever the decision we take, like I said to you, the one point I wanted to point out here, it is very easy, because everybody property values went up, we have money, great. But a lot of other people are not there, so it's easy to sit under the roof and say, no, I don't want any development. But put yourself in the shoes people who don't have money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the next speaker of tonight is Patricia Adams.
Perhaps she's in the other room. We'll wait a
I'm just going to double check with the overflow room. Is there Patricia Adams? No. So the next speaker is Penny Wallace.
You don't want to speak? No. Thank you very much. You have now.
Madam Mayor, can I ask a question?
If we can finish the people who are waiting, and then we're here to answer questions.
Well, this is more for the group and the developer. I'm
Okay.
totally confused about something.
Okay, well, we have people who are waiting to speak, so perhaps they'll ask the question that you have in your mind, and if not, then when we finish the list, we'll make sure that if there's questions, we'll deal with them.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it appears that that concludes all the individuals that have registered for tonight.
Is it Alan?
Yeah. So my only question is, I keep hearing affordable housing. Are these units capped? So is there a maximum price these units are going to sell at? Because I guarantee you speculators are going to be buying them instantly Hell, I'm going to go out and buy one if it gets built instantly, and I'll rent it out. Or if I can double my money on it, I'll double my money. This affordable housing, we're in a free enterprise market system. Again, I just left the car business after 40 years. People who bought cars in the last 2 years paid way too much money for them. And they paid too much money for them because they wanted them, not because they needed them. Affordable housing is only going to work if there's a cap put on it by some form of government, and I can assure you there's not a homeowner in here who wants their house price capped. So if they're going to call this affordable housing, again, I haven't seen unit prices, I haven't seen anything. How's that going to be addressed?
Well, perhaps that's the next step, is our meeting tonight, to have those to come out who are residents and interested in this topic. And we've certainly had a bumper crop of people out tonight, so we know that we pushed the right buttons. And we have been taking a lot of notes here. I can tell you my colleagues across here and those that are here remote have pages of notes that they have taken tonight. And this is an opportunity for the residents to get information. It's also the opportunity for council to get information. So it has served its purpose tonight. If there are other people who have not put their name down and have a question, we would take those at a later time, or perhaps we would adjourn the meeting shortly, finish up what our work has to be done, and you could seek out those that spoke on behalf of the project individually. Do you have a question?
Yes, I'd just like to go back to the idea.
Could you go take the microphone so everyone can hear you, please?
I'd just like to.
Could I have your name, please?
Oh, sorry. My name is Karen Brown. I live in Holland Landing. I'm the one who's gone around today and tried to get as many people here as possible.
You did a
for
good
this
job.
meeting. Thank you.
You did a very good job.
Thank you. I've already written my submission, my objections, I guess, to Mr. Greco. What I would like to see, please, is a public meeting in Holland Landing at the community center so that my people have a chance to ask questions. Pricing. They want to know, how long is this project? How many, if we're going to have underground parking, is it 60 feet down we're going? Is it running 24/7? Where's the exits? How are we going to expand a narrow part of Yonge Street? Like, we have too many questions, and we have building going on supposedly for new development within 3 minutes of each other. We've got 47 townhouses being built over here and 97 units. So we have Thompson in the middle, and we're all behind Thompson. We just want to know what's going on. Are they running together, the projects, one at a time? What's going on?
Our planning staff could certainly talk about the broader happenings of Holland Landing, and I know that there are several different projects that are taking place, some very small and some not so small. So your suggestion about having a meeting in Holland Landing, I will take a nod from my council members now and a vote later, just saying that we will set up a time in Holland Landing. We'll bring our staff and do very similar to what we've done tonight here in getting information about your community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Councillor Foster and I have both spoken with the developer saying exactly that we needed a meeting in Holland Landing at the community center, and we had said that if they did this public meeting, that the chambers would be filled with people objecting to the project. So I just want to let you know that this is what we said would happen, and that community meeting that you keep hearing everyone ask for, that's what we said needed to happen. So I'm hoping you will listen to that now that you've heard it from the residents as well as from council, that a public meeting is necessary to answer all the questions that the residents have. Because, I mean, mean, I'm getting inundated with phone calls, as is Councillor Foster, as is other people up here on this project, and we're not getting our questions answered from you. And, you know, this is we're spending a lot of time on a development that is not fully thought out with so many issues. So I just hope that we can have that public meeting now.
Would you give us your address, your how we can reach you, and to let you know when it will be happening? Yeah, just after our meeting, if you just write something out on a paper here, then we'll make sure that it sounds like you're one of the movers and shakers of the community, and so we'll make sure that you have the information that you need. Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to speak? It's 8:06. We still have a little bit of time. And if someone would like to come to the microphone, let us know who you are and what your issue is, then we will time you the same as we timed the ones ahead of you. Good evening.
Good evening. John Pettijan here. I'd like to talk about the strategic plan. Is that the next portion, or are you dealing with it now?
It's the next one.
All right. I will return.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and councilor members. I'm so glad that, you know, you're addressing our concerns and looking at them straightforward. I live at 19374 Yonge Street, right across from this building, the old house that you referred to earlier. My name is Reno Gumbush, and I want to tell you guys, having a 5-story building, you know, we were talking about 2 commercial spaces, and because, you know, we don't want to give them 2 commercial spaces, they're going to put an extra floor on everything. So an extra 80,000 square feet, or whatever the case may be. This is insane. Like, we're not stupid.
Excuse me. This is the opportunity to let us know what your need,
absolutely.
and I'll leave you to speak to.
My point is that I violently oppose this project, and I will put my house up for sale and move my family. We came from Toronto to avoid all this, and this, you know, it's our vision. Like, what do we want Holland Landing to look like? A concrete jungle? I don't want a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. This isn't good.
Hello.
Good evening.
I'm James Gilbert. I live at 19335 Yonge Street, which is 2 doors south of where the development is. I'll tell you a little story. I've been walking that street for over 60 years in that area around the corner, and at one point where the sidewalk stopped on my tricycle, which is right in front of 19399, I think it is, the northernmost part of the development, I learned what the word condemn mean when I read it in the window of that house. I went back to my parents and grandparents and said, "What does that mean?" And they said, "It's not suitable for living." That's 6 years ago. So when you talk about a heritage building, I don't know how many times I've seen that building be vacant, rebuilt, vacant, rebuilt, so what's left of it? Anyway, the point I wanted to make, other than that, was just clarification of something, is sometimes, depending on the time of day, we have to get out of our driveway to go somewhere. We can't, and we back into our driveway. We have to go north to go south, because as soon as these cars from one light go by our house, you look out and you can't get into our lane because there's cars making right-hand turns off Bradford Street. And it's continual like that. And I'm concerned about the fact when they get the Yonge Street Revitalization Project, continuing with people, with pedestrians, bicycles, going there just with that part, and then you get, say, 200 more people. Hopefully they like to get outside, but that'll be to our detriment because we'll have to dodge people as well. So who knows what's going to happen when there's all those pedestrians, bicycles, and cars meet up on the sidewalk.
Thank you very much. Good evening, good to have you with us.
Hello, my name's McGann. I am also one of the Oak Ridge Court residents. I'm one of the younger residents on that street. I have 3 young children, and we live in townhouses, which was all we could afford when we bought a house. And now I'm losing the privacy that we have from our backyard. We've got a beautiful 100-foot pine tree behind us, and I'm not looking forward to that being a building. For one. The other thing is the underground parking. So when they built those other townhouses off of School and Peter, they had issues with not being able to put the basements in the ground because of the water. So there's the underground river that goes right through. And so my thought is an underground parking is not going to exist at all. And so those 4-level houses may end up needing to be 5 to accommodate underground garages. So that's one of my issues. Another one is, like a few people here, I'm part of the medical community, so I'm a midwife at South Lake, and we do not have enough people right now to accommodate the birth rate in our areas. So that's another issue, adding, 90 more families. We may not be able to accommodate them in our hospital. I know we're looking to grow, but currently our obstetric system is not growing. And so that's another problem, is the obstetrics world. So like not just the old people, but the new babies that are also coming into the world are kind of important. And so, yeah, so that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to, I'm not seeing anyone else, and I know that there's opportunities after we break to have you speak to other people that are within the room as well. Individuals that didn't have an opportunity to fill out the sign-in sheet, please refer to the deputy clerk to complete it. That's very important that we have your name and a way of being in touch with you should there be another meeting or other information. So I would just ask that as well. And yeah, we're now into the resolution part of our evening. Be it resolved that Development Services Planning Branch DS 2023-10 dated March 21, 2023, entitled Official Plan Amendment, Zoning Bylaw Amendment, Draft Plan of Subdivision and Site Plan Application, Holland Hope General Partners, Inc., 19349, 19357, 19365, and 19399 Yonge Street, be received, and that the presentation, written and verbal comments made during the statutory public meeting regarding the official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, draft plan of subdivision and site plan application, Holland Hope General Partners, Inc., 19394, 19357, 19365, and 19399 Yonge Street, file OPA 2201, ZBA 2202, 19T 2200-22001, and SPA 2208 be received, and that comments presented at the statutory public meeting be addressed by Development Services Planning Branch in a comprehensive report to a future council meeting date. And, pardon me. I need a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Crone, Councillor LaHaye, all those in favor, and that's carried. And with that, we will close off.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that will conclude the statutory public meeting portion of tonight's meeting. The next public meeting is going to be focusing on apologies, it's going to be focusing on the 2022-2023 strategic plan. So if individual members of the public are interested, we're more than happy to have you here with us tonight. Otherwise, individuals can leave the room. They don't have to stay with us for long.
And we'll take a short break ourselves. Good evening. The Town of East Gwillimbury 2022 to 2026 Strategic Plan. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Members of the public, this portion of the council meeting is a public meeting to inform the public and obtain public input on the Town of East Gwillimbury 2022 to 2026 Strategic Plan. There will be a presentation from town staff to provide an overview of the strategic plan. Following this presentation, members of the public will be invited to offer their comments or concerns respecting the strategic plan. If you plan to speak to council at this meeting, or if you wish to be notified of any future council meetings concerning the town's strategic plan, you must provide your contact information to the clerk. And with that, I will turn this over to Deputy CAO Velchik.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm going to have Margot Bégin do the presentation. As you know, Ms. Bégin has been providing the facilitation for this process. We've been very fortunate to have the competence and skill in-house that's enabled us to facilitate the strategic planning process. It's coming along very well, and Ms. Bégin will provide you with an update this evening as part of the continuation of this process as we hopefully near the completion of a strat plan to guide us for the next 4 years.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, and welcome to the members of council and members of the public. Just for some context, as Deputy CAO Velchik mentioned, my role is General Manager of Development Services, but because of prior experience in facilitating municipal strategic plans, we were able to leverage that opportunity to create the plan in-house with a team of colleagues assisting me. If we could go to the next slide, please. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is really to share the process and the aims and objectives of the strategic plan with members of the public and validate that it in fact represents the direction that council heard through the campaign trail and heard from various residents, and that we are in fact the priorities that were identified are the right priorities. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the substance of the plan. Really just going to give some context about how the plan was created to this point, but certainly open to answer any questions that members of the public may have about specific detail of the plan as we go forward. So the purpose of strategic planning is essentially to establish a roadmap. At a high level, it guides council for their term of council, and through that strategic plan, we develop our business plan and budgets at the departmental level, and that filters down to individual and departmental work plans, so that everything that we do should serve the strategic priorities that were identified as part of this plan. In a municipal context, it's council that identifies the strategic vision, which, as I mentioned, should reflect the vision that was shared by their constituents, and then it's up to staff to sort of operationalize that plan and turn it into action to achieve the objectives. Next slide, please. So when we initiated this process, we looked first at, what is it that we want to achieve? Those are the strategic objectives. What is the community? What do we want for the community? Where do we want to be? How do we set it on the path for the type of growth that we are hoping to achieve? And then we had to look at prioritizing, because in an environment of limited resources and time, you have to pick where you can have the most impact. So we looked at what is most important, what do we need to do first, and then perhaps most importantly, how will we know when we've got there? What does success look like? How will we measure our achievement? So we're now sort of, even though it looks like halfway through, there's been the first two steps involved a lot of engagement, a lot of discussions, but we're now sort of at the validation stage and ensuring that, as I said, have we got it right? Have we missed anything? Is this the strategic plan that reflects the wishes and aspirations of the community? And then once we have that feedback and have consolidated it, we will then communicate and share the formal plan once it has been adopted by council, establish and reinforce some of the metrics that have already been established to be able to measure success. And then as we go forward throughout this term of council, continue to refer back to it and review our progress, and then adapt as required. As we all know, during the last term of council, no one could have anticipated that we would head into a global pandemic. And so we need to remember that the strategy is a living document that will continue to evolve and change and respond to the needs of the community as we go forward. Next slide, please. So in building the strategic plan, we've had numerous conversations over recent months. It started with the conversations that members of council had at the doors and with residents and businesses throughout the campaign trail. And then as part of the orientation after the new council was elected, we began planning for this process. We talked about how the strategic plan would be built and what the process would look like. We then, the strategic planning team, conducted interviews with members of council to sort of drill down into the themes and what they felt was most important to be considered in this plan. We conducted a number of workshops that the public was welcome to view and are available online if anyone wants to go back and watch any of them. And that's where we sort of discussed, what are the themes we need to focus on? And the idea of sustainability was one of the themes that came out loud and clear in terms of understanding that it's a balance between economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, and social sustainability to build the kind of community that we want. We produced a draft strategy that has now been circulated and have invited members of the public to provide feedback. We've also reached out to key stakeholders such as our advisory committees of council to get their feedback as well. And part of tonight's exercise is to hear from members of the public and answer any questions that they may have. Next slide, please. So again, I won't go into a lot of detail. The document is available online and certainly can be made available in print form for anybody that would like to see it and review it in that format. And once it has been adopted, we will have it'll be shared and available at different places throughout the community, libraries, and certainly town facilities. Next slide, please. So it talks about sort of the high-level vision for the community. It talks about our core purpose, and what came out of the discussions around the core purpose was the focus on providing value for tax dollars. That was something that resonated with members of council. That's something that council heard from residents, that they, as we continue to change and grow as a community, that we need to be always mindful of providing value and demonstrating value for the tax dollars that are provided to the town. Next slide, please. The vision for our community has evolved slightly from the previous iteration of the strategy, introducing some new language around resiliency and sustainability, and really focusing on being a welcoming community that connects residents to services, opportunities, and to each other. The theme of community building, is embedded in those ideas around walkability and complete communities, and creating neighborhoods where people can connect both to economic opportunity, to services and amenities, and ultimately to each other. And that's sort of been the common thread throughout this process. Next slide, please. Sustainability, as I mentioned, has been a foundational principle in this strategy, and the three elements of that sustainability are economic, environmental, and social. And these questions that appear in the strategy are ones that staff are intended to use and ask as they move forward with developing programs or developing initiatives or reviewing applications to ensure that they align with the overall goals of council and of the strategy as a whole. So, things like when we, not every project will touch every element of sustainability, but ensuring that staff continually refer back to these keeps us on track and makes sure that we're doing the right things. Next slide, please. So again, I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail on the priorities. What's new from the prior strategy is that in the prior strategy we had 4 strategic pillars. We've now highlighted environmental stewardship as its own priority, but they remain relatively consistent with what was part of the prior strategies. We certainly, as a municipality, and in line with that idea of providing value for tax dollars, we want to focus on providing quality programs and services. We want to make sure that we're giving residents and businesses the supports and services and amenities that they need. We certainly want to move forward with responsible growth. As you know, as evidenced by the conversations earlier this evening, we are a growing community. There are a lot of changes that come along with that growth, and finding the right balance to achieve our objectives around sustainability and livability and quality of life as we grow is a key tenet of what we need to do going forward. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, environmental stewardship has been highlighted as its own priority, and we hope that as we continue to grow and progress, that the environmental initiatives become more embedded and ingrained in everything that we do, so that there will come a day when we don't necessarily need to highlight it as a special area of focus because it has become part of our daily operations. Building complete communities, that's the idea of, it impacts everything from the phasing of development so that we don't have stranded communities that have no connection to amenities or each other. It has to do with some of the ideas that were discussed earlier around making sure there's an appropriate mix of services and commercial enterprises, amenities, gathering spaces, recreation opportunities, all of the things that allow families and communities to thrive and actively participate in community life. Next slide, please. And the 5th pillar is more internal facing to the corporation. And focuses on a culture of municipal excellence. So always pushing ourselves to be innovative, to find ways to be as cost effective and efficient as we possibly can, to deliver service excellence, to seek new technologies and new ways of doing things that provide better, faster opportunities and services to the residents and businesses that we serve. So within that, those broad categories, each department now develops their own business plan and has identified objectives that will serve those priorities and pillars as we go forward. So the point of the public engagement, as I mentioned, and sort of the survey that exists online, is asking, do the themes and priorities accurately reflect what matters most to the community, and have we missed anything? And that's a part of the question that we're posing this evening as well. Next slide, please. So this is just sort of just to give you an idea of the visual of the final few pages of the report, and the commitment that it's not just sort of we print the strategic plan and we're done. That we have a commitment to regular reporting, monitoring our progress, measuring our progress, and adapting where and when it's needed. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, we will be gathering and analyzing any feedback that we get from public stakeholders, continuing to take input from members of council, and we'll come back once we've had an opportunity to sort of synthesize and analyze that feedback, and if it is if it's evident that there are changes needed or additions needed, then we'll be able to consider adding those to the document, and then ultimately get to the point where we publish the final version for formal adoption. And then it will be a continuous process of reviewing and revising the plan as we progress through this term of council. Next slide, please. So this is just a little bit about the communication plan. We do have a live online survey where people can provide feedback. We have this meeting tonight. We will certainly consolidate any feedback that's provided from members of the public who wish to speak, and we will be accepting feedback until the 7th of April. And as I said, that feedback will then be part of the final consideration before the adoption of the strategic plan. So unless there are any questions, I can leave it there.
Are there any questions from members of council? Councillor Crone, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to our presenter. Just one question. You talked about complete communities, and I was just wondering if you could, in layman's terms, say what that means to you, and give, I think, everyone here present and watching online, what does that mean, a complete community?
In an ideal world, a complete community is one where you have access to housing, you have access to economic opportunity, you have work, you have access to amenities and services that you need. We've heard some discussions, and we, through this process, we talked about the idea of 15-minute neighborhoods, and that being, what that's about is just that everything you have is at your fingertips, and that in an ideal world, when you're less car dependent, you can walk to the services that you need, that you can walk to the park, that you can connect with your neighbors and build a sense of community. It's very aspirational at this point because we are a car dependent community, but it's becomes a consideration when people come, or when developers come forward, the idea of ensuring we get it right. Do we have the services built into this development? Do we have opportunities for people to have is there a corner store where you can buy milk, or do you have to get in your car and drive, to down the highway to do that? So it's just trying to be conscious of making sure that that residents have the services that they need, that there's access to education, that you have, you're able to build a life and create a sense of connection within your neighborhood, within your community.
Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And to that, complete communities also, to me, speaks to affordability. That when we look at the price of homes, in East Gwillimbury, we have the additional expense of every adult in the house needs their own car. So moving towards a complete community where a home can have one car and the residents can walk to most of their needs and still have their one car for when they need to go to Costco or Home Depot or something like that. So I think the affordability piece, it's what's really important to me. And we see when we're talking with these developers how expensive roads and parking is. So not only does the resident have to pay for their car and their insurance and their maintenance, their gas, they also need to pay for the exercise in their lot to park their car, the extra roads to drive their car, et cetera, et cetera. So complete communities, to me, it really speaks to affordability as well.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I didn't really touch on, but that element of diversity of housing stock or housing options is embedded in that. The idea that there are services and amenities for people at every stage of life and development. So it's, the full breadth of from, again, as part of the conversations earlier, from young families just starting out to people that are, seniors and maybe looking to downsizing. So it's not easy to achieve, but I think it's sort of the lens that we look at so that we don't have, so that we avoid having communities that are just streets and streets of residential with no opportunity to sort of interact and connect and or get to know their neighbors, that type of thing.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Thank you. We have a number of our public in the audience tonight, and I'd invite you to come and speak. If you could give your name and your address and come to the microphone so everybody could hear if there were any questions that you had. Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we do have one registered speaker for tonight's meeting on the strategic plan. That would be John Petitjean.
Welcome, John. Good to have you with us tonight.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors, residents of East Gwillimbury. Thank you for allowing me to present this evening. I'd like to start by saying I've lived in this community for over 65 years, a community that is rich in culture, history, tradition, opportunities, and a bunch of wonderful people. These are some of the qualities that make us Canadian. Over the years, the land has changed. We see rapid growth, a disregard for protection of our farmlands, forests, waterways. An influx of immigration without sustainable plan has created incredible pressure on the region that has brought us to a housing crisis. Young families, Canadians, and new immigrants deserve better, as I recall growing up. We entrust our elected officials to ensure our communities are kept rich and vibrant, while at the same time keeping our heritage and our lifestyles enriched. This council is set on a path tonight that will shape the look, the dynamics, and the makeup of this community to come. The strategic plan in front of council tonight has the opportunity to incorporate many tremendous parts and components, making East Gwillimbury a model for future community development in Ontario. As I see, read, and listen to my community and surroundings, I cannot help but realize the influence placed on this council to adhere to decisions that have been created by federal or provincial governments or foreign groups. Existing communities have been destroyed because of these groups. Some of the driving factors are profit, greed, and legacy. Municipal governments work in step with the Sustainable Development Act, or the Rio, Paris, or Kyoto Accords. The meddling of NGO groups, minority groups, special interest groups, place an enormous amount of pressure on the strategic plan we are about to undertake. Issues such as the housing crisis created by our federal government, the farming of crops and nitrogen yields, the destruction of wetlands, the valuable wildlife and farming, infrastructure that is crumbling and needs to be upgraded or repaired. On page 8 of the strategic plan, under the key deliverables, states maintain strong partnerships with York Region and 6 municipalities, the build industry, that's BILD, and other stakeholders regarding the best practices and future growth. What does stakeholders mean? Well, according to the Oxford Dictionary, a person with interest or concern in something, especially a business. What does partnerships mean? Again, according to the Oxford Dictionary, a partnership is a business by definition consists of 2 or more people who combine their resources to form a business and agree to share the risks, profits, and losses. The above references found in the strategic plan can lead to misinformation if not clear. Thus, the transparency of information in this strategic plan is imperative. In reading the strategic plan, your interpretation of sustainability and the root word sustain are similar, but lack a defining position. The term sustainable is used many times in the plan, but what does it actually mean? Well, again, according to the Oxford Dictionary, able to maintain a certain rate or level. Do we know what that rate or level is? Who's setting the parameters? And what does sustainability mean? Again, I go to my favorite book, the Oxford Dictionary. Meeting our own needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. There is no measurement, comparability, or reference to the definition spelled out in this plan. There is no checks or balances associated with this plan to protect and ensure the details are in taxpayers' best interests. How many of you have been to China or a communist country or a smart city? I've traveled to communist countries. I've been to China 3 times. I've seen what state control does to people. There is a slow and persistent introduction of make us feel safe and secure by using electronic tracking, surveilling, cameras, and artificial intelligence. The introduction of a 15-minute smart city sold to us as convenience, safe, friendly, everything within walking distance, good for the environment. All this is true. But there is a dark side with a slow step-by-step of misinformation to regulate, monitor, track, and control people while removing people's independence, freedom, and individuality. Massive expenditures of tax funds will be required to build dedicated infrastructures such as housing complexes, transportation lines, power grids, and more. Squeezing more people into smaller areas and minimizing green space can only lead to violence, division, and distrust in neighborhoods, as seen in other parts of Canada, the US, and Europe. For example, the Viva bus routes placed in the middle of a major street, or the replacement of streetlights sold as energy efficient, only to learn possible AI capabilities. Successful strategic plans include health and welfare of people, along with wildlife and the environment as stated in the plan. To have a strong, robust, and vibrant community, we need strong leadership and like-minded politicians working together to make our community maintain the cultural heritage we have come to know. The strategic plan, I must say, sounds very progressive, innovative, and state-of-the-art. But most important clause is missing. A clause that should override all aspects of this strategic plan. The plan should be subject to the human rights, privileges, and freedoms according to the Canadian Constitution and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms stated in Article 6, mobility rights. People having the right to travel, assemble, and speak freely without reprisal or restriction. Failing to include this in the strategic plan does not meet the aspirations of residents, businesses, and taxpayers to make this community the leading municipality in Ontario. So I submit to Council that the clause be inserted and overrides all clauses, amendments, notes, remakes, revisions moving forward in the strategic plan. And finally, without going into detail, the potential changes in land use bylaws and land captured, if allowed, will rewrite our existing bylaws, affecting rich farm, forest, nature lands for what? Smart cities, rapid deployment, expansion. This will reduce our sustainability to feed ourselves. We become less self-sufficient and rely on foreign food producers from around the world, increasing their carbon footprint as opposed to our local food suppliers. We become dependent to their supplies and demands and needs. So how will this strategic plan meet the cultural heritage and environmental needs of our community when both issues are at two different ends of the line? You can't have one without impacting the other unless you're a magician. I thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me, and I wish you the best of luck in creating a terrific strategy plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We now have, go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor, we don't have any additional registered speaker for tonight's meetings, so that would leave you to the resolution that's presented on the agenda.
Thank you. We have the opportunity to have speakers give names and addresses if there is any at this time. And seeing none, be it resolved that the public meeting presentation dated March 21st, 2023, entitled 2022-2026 Strategic Plan be received. And that comments presented at the public meeting be addressed in a comprehensive report to a future council meeting date. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Crothers. Councillor Jones. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item K on our agenda is our council committees and boards and groups. And the Environmental Advisory Committee report is number 1, EAC 2023-01 Climate Emergency Declaration. And perhaps I can ask Councillor Crone, Council Liaison, and Chris Ross, Staff Liaison to the Environmental Advisory Committee, to provide an introductory remarks regarding the report. And I believe the Chair of the Environmental Advisory Committee is here with us tonight as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's my pleasure to introduce the hard-working people of the Environmental Services Committee. Chris Ross is here along with our chair. And this has been a long time in the works. And I think I need to also thank Councillor Laura Lee Carruthers, who was the previous chair, council liaison to the Environmental Advisory Committee. And I look forward to the information being shared tonight. And I hope we have some good discussion. I hand it over to Christina.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your attention tonight. I will be very short, just presenting Mark. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your surname. But I just have to say here that it has been a lot of work behind this report from the Environmental Advisory Committee. And just said that the Advisory Committee is a citizens-based group that is concerned about environment. So, Mark, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, councillors, and public attendees still here in attendance with us tonight. Thank you very much for your time. Yes, my name is Mark Goldsworthy. I am currently the East Gwillimbury Environmental Advisory Chair, and I'm here tonight, as the chair member, but also as a concerned citizen. In February 2021, members of EAC, that's the Environmental Advisory Committee, submitted a memo and a presentation to council. And that was regarding the declaration of a climate emergency. It is now 2 years later. And while there has been momentum to fight climate change, we are still faced with the same serious existential questions and how to mitigate a climate catastrophe. In fact, as many of you probably know, just yesterday, the UN Secretary General stated our world needs climate action on all fronts. Everything, everywhere, all at once. We do have time, as many of you know, to limit 1.5 degrees Celsius. But that threshold is slipping away. Now is the time to act. I'm here today simply to present the East Gwillimbury Environmental Advisory Committee report dated February 22nd, 2023, and encourage that the town of East Gwillimbury act on the urgent matter of declaring a climate emergency. The report provides East Gwillimbury recommendations on climate emergency declarations and for council consideration. Specifically, in preparing the report to council, I want to advise members here today that members of EAC have contributed their background information and to why it's important to them. This is a personal matter. It affects all of us. I encourage you to reflect on these contributions provided by members of the EAC, as we are a small collective, and while we do strive to support a range of issues and we come from diverse backgrounds, we cannot do this alone and we require your support. The next step would be the town taking the opportunity to review the report and declare a climate emergency and to enact a climate plan. Now, EG is not alone in this. There are over 600 municipalities throughout Canada, 3 of them actually Northern 6 partners here in York Region. They have either declared a climate emergency or have a climate action plan. As a community advisory group, we encourage the town and all residents to engage in a proactive way to ensure that future generations can thrive here. Tonight, we talked a lot about future development, about a strategic plan. All that is dependent on a healthy environment. I thank you for your time, Madam Mayor, members of council, and the public. To all residents who call EG home, I look forward to the town receiving this report and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've left us with a lot of thoughts and ideas, and know that we need to do something ourselves to make a difference as well. Thank you. I have a resolution. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Thank you so much. I just want council to know that this has been the work of this committee for the last 4 years, really. People who were on council previously remember the presentation that Stefan made, and at that time we were in the middle of another emergency, the pandemic emergency, so this was put on the back burner, and now it's coming forward. And it's coming forward at a time that I know Chris Ross is already working on this. So this report, I would ask council to really take a good long look at, because there's so much great information in this, but what we can do. I remember, I think it was Councillor Roy DiClemente who said, if we declare an emergency, what does it mean? And so that's what the committee looked at and went back to, and this report shows what does it mean when you declare an emergency. So the answer to that question is all embedded in this report, and I would be very happy, Madam Mayor, to move this report, to receive it and to refer it to staff to bring back at a future meeting.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Foster, go ahead, please.
I agree with Councillor Carruthers. I would certainly support this. I'd like to ask, though, if it's possible for future, not right away, but if we could be provided with, I guess, some information about numbers or indicators. So you mentioned there were a couple of municipalities in York Region. I know Aurora is one of them. But it would be interesting to see what they're using for indicators and numbers that show that they are having some success. If in the future something like that could be given to us, give us a better idea of where we would expect this to go. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So in the report, it shows 3 municipalities. Kingston, they reduced their emissions dramatically by 40%. Aurora established a goal of reducing emissions by 80%. So it's listed it's embedded in that report, some of that, but maybe when Chris Ross brings forward her report, we'll have more details on that. But I think you're right that having those numbers that we can really sink our teeth into is important. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor LaHaye, go ahead.
I'll just
Councillor
jump in.
Foster.
Yeah, and again, I like the fact that the numbers are in there, but I do have to admit, when I was reading it, I thought, what exactly did the numbers mean? You know, how did they get there? So that's basically what I'm looking for.
Councillor LaHaye, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. And I'd like to acknowledge that the town prioritizes environmental concerns and strategies with the addition of a dedicated staff member with Christina Ross in that role, and that there's still opportunities. There are always opportunities to communicate with Christina, but in particular, I want to give a little plug to your sessions, your public sessions that you are having. You've had one already. There's another one tomorrow evening, Wednesday the 22nd, where the public can engage with you and talk about environmental issues, as well as a virtual session on Thursday. So if you want, through you, Madam Mayor, if Christina could remind the public of the details of those opportunities. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the comment. Yes, we have had 2 community meetings, one in Holland Landing and one in Mount Albert. It was last week, and tomorrow we are having the 3rd one in person. It is in the complex, in the sport complex, and the virtual one on Thursday. Everything is from 6 to 8, and everybody is invited and welcome to participate. Also, I would like to say that this is not the only opportunity that people will have to engage with this strategy and environmental stewardship in town. You can connect with us through email. It's environment@eastwilliamwoody.ca. So please, we are just one email away. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions, comments? Pardon?
I'll be happy to
Second that. Thank you. Be it resolved that the Environmental Advisory Committee, EAC, report EAC 2023-01 dated March 21st, 2023, entitled Climate Emergency Declaration be received, and that Council refer Environmental Advisory Committee EAC report EAC 2023-01 to staff for a report back to a future meeting. Councillor LaHaye? You're pushing it, yeah.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion's been moved by Councillor Carruthers and seconded by Councillor Crone. It just requires a vote of council.
All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Looking very forward to that. We have item L is correspondence for consideration. Correspondence from A. Wong, Race Director, Mount Albert Sports Day, 5K Runs Walk Committee dated February 27, 2023, regarding a request for a bylaw to support the Mount Albert Sports Day 5K Run Walk 2023. I have a mover in a second there. Councillor Crone, Councillor. Thank you. Be it resolved that the correspondence from A. Wong, Race Director, Mount Albert Sports Day 5K Run Walk Committee dated February 27, 2023, regarding a request for bylaw to support the Mount Albert Sports Day 5K Run Walk 2023 be received, and that council requests staff to present a bylaw at the April 4th, 2023 council meeting to prohibit through traffic of motorized vehicles for the Mount Albert Community Center, the fairgrounds, as required for the purpose of hosting the 20th annual, wow, it's the 20th annual, Mount Albert 5K Run Walk on Saturday, June the 3rd, 2023 from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Councillor LaHaye, Councillor Crone, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And we're down to reports. Item M, Development Services Memo, Part Lot Control Exemption Bylaw, South Sharon Phase 1, Menkes PLC 2303. And General Manager Bégin, if you could.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. This is, council has actually seen this previously, that the exemption bylaw expired before the developers were able to transfer ownership to the home buyers. So this allows, this is essentially an extension, or it's a new application, but it extends the exemption to allow for the transfer of the properties to the home buyers. And I believe that the development has advanced significantly, and certainly Manager of Planning, Victoria Moore, is here to speak to this if anyone has any detailed questions.
Are there detailed questions? I'm not seeing any. I have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Crone, Councillor Carruthers. Be it resolved that Development Services Memorandum dated March 21st, 2023, entitled Part Lot Control Exemption Bylaw, South Sharon Phase 1, Menkes PLC 2303 be received. All those in favor? And that's carried. And we have 4 bylaws that are on our prepared agenda, and I am going to suggest that we move them all at once. This is a bylaw 2023-018 being a bylaw to establish the 2022-2026 rotational acting mayor schedule. Bylaw 2023-019 being a bylaw to adopt amendment number 02023 to official plan of the town of East Gwillimbury. 3 is a bylaw 2023-023 being a bylaw to establish rates and changes for the provision of water and wastewater services commencing April 1st, 2023. And number 4 is a bylaw 2023-023 being a bylaw to exempt certain lands from part lot control provisions of the Planning Act pertaining to a portion of those lands within the South Sharon Plan of Subdivision File 19T 14002, Block 121 on Plan 65M-4548 Menkes in relation to item M1. Be it resolved that bylaws 2023 018, 2023 019, 2023 020, and 2023 021 be taken as read and acted and signed by the mayor and municipal clerk. All those in favor? Oh my goodness, I didn't get a mover. You'll move it? Councillor Hay will second it. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. I don't believe there's any other business. However, if someone does, this is the time to say so. I'm not seeing any. With that, we have a confirming bylaw. Be it resolved that the bylaw 2023-022 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council meeting held on March 21st, 2023 be taken as read and acted and signed by the mayor and municipal clerk. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Foster, Councillor LaHaye, all those in favor? That's carried. And we have an adjournment of this meeting at 9:19, moved by Councillor Crothers, seconded by Councillor Foster. All those in favor? And that's carried. And we are, thank you very much.